I'm Johan Besche, and I bring greetings from Calvary Church, Arlington. When Pastor Barb asked me to preach this morning, I saw the opportunity for our two churches to know each other a little bit better, and so I'm very happy to be talking with you this morning. I am a father, a pediatric physical therapist, Calvary lay leader for many years, and now I am head of church council at Calvary. I have spent 25 years working with disabled folks and their families, and I have learned so much from them. I've worked in clinics, hospitals, and most importantly, at a school for deaf kids, in a care center for children with neurological conditions in South Africa, and now I do home visits with babies and their families in the Boston area. I consider myself blessed to have received a 12-year on-the-job education in disability and culture from the deaf community when I worked at the Learning Center for the Deaf, and have continued to immerse myself in various cultures from South Africa to Uganda to the Philippines. You might be thinking, okay, Johan, that's very nice, but what does it have to do with Calvary and Harvard-Epworth? Well, that's this wonderful thing about Calvary. We do much work and support in the community, from the Somerville Homeless Coalition to Arlington Eats to hosting cooling centers and many other things. But more subtly, Calvary supports the work of numerous individuals like me who get emotional and spiritual, sometimes financial support from Calvary. Park is loud and active in the climate justice movement. Sonia works tirelessly for gun violence prevention. Susan runs a thriving food pantry, and my wife Sarah runs programs in South Africa, bringing women together across race, ethnicity, and difference, among many other individuals at Calvary. For me, the work that I do is rewarding and gut-wrenching, alternately fulfilling and draining. The joy of playing with babies and meeting them where they are, whether that's making jokes with a 2.5-year-old, or diving into the subtlest nonverbal communication of a 1-year-old with cerebral palsy who can only move her eyes. The sorrow of conversations with parents, telling them for the first time that their child has a serious condition. I rely on my Calvary community to prop me up, from simply going to worship, to a support group for caregivers on a Sunday afternoon, to a walk with Pastor Cynthia. It's become clear to me that my calling is not simply to do the physical therapy work. It's to take the knowledge that I've gained from the children and the families, the joy of celebrating every single person, celebrating, not just welcoming, not just accepting, celebrating every single person, and to grow empathy where I can. Because we are steeped in a culture which tells us the opposite, that some people are more worthy than others. Often that's based on race or class or wealth, but even more tenaciously, it's based on disability. Capitalism tells us that folks are worth less when they can't work. Long-standing parenting norms tell us that children should behave and do what they're told, that they are lesser if they miss a milestone, let alone if they use a piece of equipment to get around or communicate. On the other hand, Jesus tells us to welcome, to help, to celebrate our neighbor. What is a neighbor but someone who doesn't look like us, who is from a different place from us? What about someone who doesn't walk like us, who doesn't communicate like us, who doesn't use the same sensory systems as we do to interact with the world? That same radical welcome that we strive to do with everyone, we need to do that also with disabled people. And what does that look like? I'll give you a couple of examples from my experience. Things that I have shared with families and children. These are reconceptualizations, re-understandings of our assumptions. These are the most important things I've learned from these folks, more than how to do physical therapy or the best way to teach a child to walk. It's these re-understandings. First, let's talk about deaf people. We are taught to understand this as a loss. We talk about hearing loss as not having an entire sense. Well, what if you think of deafness as a culture, the way they do? They have a community with a full language, its own practices and traditions. What if we think of the deaf community as a language minority instead of a disability? If you know sign language and communicate with them, are they lacking something? Do they need to be fixed? Or are they someone you don't know how to communicate with? And you can use various ways to do that. Another example is movement disability. We, therapists, spend a lot of time trying to get some disabled children to do movements that are really, really hard for them. To stand and walk. And we have equipment that we can make it possible for them to be full participants in society, but we still focus on, are they walking? Are they standing? Are they succeeding in these things that are so hard for them, that their nervous system is making so difficult? That equipment is expensive, it's hard to get, and our society, our culture says, oh, you're using one of those. You're lesser, you're not as worthy. People look down on you. The story I have is about a child who I worked with recently, an almost 2-year-old with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy, you may know, is a nervous system injury. Makes it hard for children and adults with it to move. Standing was hard for her, walking was even harder, and she would tell you with her tears and her resistance, just like any other 2-year-old. One day, I played with her on a big bed the family had. We crawled, we rolled, we fell down, we hid under pillows. She was doing complicated, subtle movements. They just didn't happen to be related to standing or walking. Her mom watched and saw the joy on her daughter's face. And I took a moment to talk with Mom. I said, look what she's doing. Look how well she's moving. When we don't have to tell her she's moving wrong. We don't have to tell her she's moving wrong. We can say, yeah, move like that. That's a natural way for you to move. That's your way of moving. And it's working. When we don't have to tell her she's moving wrong. I wish I could describe the look on Mom's face as she took this in and thought about her daughter. It was beautiful. So that's my challenge for you today. Think about the culture you're steeped in and what it tells you to think and how you can begin to move through that. How you can take the assumptions that you're handed, like the assumption that the assumption that disability makes someone lesser, and turn it on its head. How can you celebrate someone for exactly who they are, what they're doing, what they're good at, instead of what they're not doing, what they're not good at. That's my challenge for you today. Thank you for inviting me today, and I hope we'll have many more opportunities to share between our churches and get to know each other better.